Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
Begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of your ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
With me in the metaverse is William John and Aiden. Good to see you both. How's it going?
Hola.
Well, let's be honest. This is what they came to see. They wanted to see hairy men, right? This is what it's all about.
Yep,
This is
the
what it's really
men
all
of the
about.
forest, the green men, wild men.
Super.
There's a
hairy.
very
But-
funny story about, I think it was Philip the Crazy Philip, during the at the end part of the 100-Year War, where him and a few of his friends, they dressed up as wild men. And dressing up as wild men back in the time means you put a lot of sticky oil residue on your body to put all this weird hair. And when you do that, it's very flammable. And they told everyone, please do not put out all of your fires before when they decided to run around during a ball. And they're just like, I'm the wild man. Oh, I'm the wild man. They're cursing everyone. And then somebody just decided to throw a flame at them. And all three of them went up in flames. And, you know, the king barely survived that. But two of his best friends, who were like, I would say pretty big guys, like, you know, healthy guys, they get there cooked alive.
Oh, that's pretty French. Well, William John earlier was talking to me about a bunch of things. I have like one thing up, which we were talking about, which is like desert survival camps. But you were talking about seminary a second ago.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, so Andreas and I both have said that we, at one point in our life, had considered seminary as a, it's like if someone was going to go to the G League for the NBA and shit. You know what I mean? It's like, I got skill. I don't know. They're not paying me millions of dollars, but is there a place for me to work on my craft? And, like, seminary makes sense at some weird point. I think.
If you're a teenager and you're thinking about like where you're gonna go, or like young 20s even, you're like, okay, there's like an intellectual place to study spiritualism, and you see if you've ever been to like the Vatican or Utah or
trusted
Budapest.
to pretty straight up, and if you just are like doing the work, like it's like a health club or like pumping iron or some shit, but it is like pumping iron. You know, it's a lot deeper than probably ever imagined. But like, not to like make distinctions. It was just that the hug was Aiden did not consider seminary, but yet here we are, all in the podcast verse, broadcasting our voices. And I just feel like a seminary is a place to strengthen your voice. And maybe, where did you strengthen your voice? Where, what? Because maybe no, not where, but like, does that resonate at all?
I know.
Yeah,
Aiden's doing a lot
kind of.
freedom content.
I mean, I grew up in Texas, so there was a lot of kids that it wasn't really seminary that kids wanted to do. It was be a youth minister. That was the big thing.
Right.
In the day, like, you know, youth minister, like, because that was kind of like summer camp for a lot of kids. Kai, come. Oh, you would have people do that.
What was that?
What?
Where in the South
I'm sorry,
are you from?
I had to just lay dog out. I'm sorry. I just Texas.
Oh, you're in
Texas area. So there's a lot of kids that did that. Yeah, but I guess like where I developed my voice was actually like DIOM. You know what that is? Destination imagination, or there'd be these improv things when you're kids that you would develop these skits or projects that really required you to be creative. And that was a huge thing back in the day. You know, people would, and I guess that's kind of where I get a little bit of my comedic skills. That, you know, I really worked on. I mean, that was something that was there. But Kyra, come on. Sorry, come on, getting my dog. My dog out. So yeah, here's Kyra.
But I know you do a lot of content about like freedom, like 'cause you're into like America in terms of like the world ending up being destroyed, and you want like to save it. Like you do care about making the world a better place. And
I don't know now. I don't know about that now, because I'm more of like, I felt that like a lot of the things like you kind of have like these conservatives do is they kind of exacerbate things that are inevitably going to happen. So sometimes I feel like it's better just to make it even worse. I think there is like, you know, that Owen Benjamin. Cooper, come on. Cooper. You know, the Owen Benjamin type people that that, you know, spend a lot of time just trying to develop, you know, just creating a family, you know, their thing. They just said, screw it all. No more public life, nothing. It's just going to get bad no matter what. There's no saving it. So, you know, I'm kind of like that.
you're losing faith.
I mean, I definitely think it's going to get worse. Like everything, especially, you know, the gullibility of the boomers.
Wait, what are you saying?
The gullibility of the boomers.
No, Will. What would Will say?
Well, you're from Texas, and the two voices I think of from Texas are Kinnison and Bill Hicks, which converge into Alex Jones. Are those three big voices in your life?
Alex Jones is kind of like, he had a lot of great ideas, but, you know, it's just kind of funny. Like, he's doing this boomer thing of, I'm not racist right now, so he will do things or he will not go into certain things, even though he's already been sued for $5 billion that no one expects him to actually get, or like whatever, like $500 million. That everyone kind of assumes he can just ignore now. I thought that was, you know, I mean, he's definitely interesting. The people, though, I do listen to a lot now is actually Linda Moulton. Linda Moulton and David Paulides. Those are my big, like, UFO people I listen to a lot.
What are you doing to me?
What? David
UFOs?
Paul Leeds is the big. He's the guy that kind of organizes all the missing 411 people, like missing people, weird type stuff. He's the police officer that at least does that on YouTube. You get a little bit of that with John D'Souza. So these are kind of like all those weird alternative people, but David Paul Leeds and Linda Moulton have been pretty instrumental in keeping together these communities that talk about certain things like cattle mutilation, stuff like that. Like those are the two big people I talk to a lot. And I'm having to get Cooper, my dog, other Cooper out. Cooper!
Do you play a lot of video games?
Yeah, I mean, no, not as much now. Like I like watching them, but it's like I'm a very addicted person. So it's like if I play a video game, I'm playing it for 10 hours. And I think there's a lot of people that like that now. And it kind of sucks because it's like, we're all trying to get a career in something. And, it's like, oh, machine learning for me. Oh, you should do play games or video game development. But I'm trying really hard not to. But, yeah. And it's kind of like the funny thing about video games right now, what's being kind of developed is developing bots that are unbeatable. So now there's this whole game strategy of how do you make competitive gaming that is hard for AI to learn, like
right?
AI learn successfully.
Exactly.
Or,
this bug in the system, right?
what?
There's a bug in the system. So like there's gaming and people want a game, but there's this bug that is hard to work around for whatever fucking reason, right?
Yeah.
What's the bug? What do you mean by the bug? What's the bug?
Well, he's saying about for competitive gaming to make it like on the up and up, it's difficult. There's like you gotta work through the mechanics of the systems and shit.
There's no way to actually have competitive gaming be fair unless everyone has the same machine. And so, for instance, if I have a wider screen, I can see more. Right now, we can only see this much of the screen. But if my screen is a bigger monitor, and all of a sudden I have room to the side, I have a competitive edge. They have tech in the monitors now that can help assist you, or you'll maybe have Neuralink, or maybe you can go study. But realistically, the bridge between human and machine to me is like hermit crab more and more, right? It's just a shell.
We're talking about gaming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're talking about certain technological advantages, okay?
Right.
Right, so if we reduce gaming down to chess, then all those technological advantages go out the window, right? Because chess has already been established as a competitive, non-exploitable competitive dimension, right?
Well, except for that recent thing with Magnus, where the guy had the butt plug.
Oh yeah, the guy he had his like AI chess thing all set up.
Yeah,
but it's pretty cool
because there's an open source standard project for sex toy hardware that he likely used with Godot or Unity or any of these things with the capacity to give him buzzes so that he knew.
So if we reduce anything electronically to its essence, right? Composition can be reduced electronically to chess, and music can be reduced electronically to composition.
Yeah.
And these elements of AI have been mastered, and they
haven't been mastered.
Oh, well, I don't know if you
good example of this.
I listen to, my friend.
Well, okay, this is something
I hear jam.
He just got. I didn't cut him out. I swear to God, I think he just accidentally cut himself. That would be hilarious. I was like, no, we don't look at him. No, but now you have to make your argument first because he's not here. Explain what you're talking about.
Well, okay, so AI.
Hey, sorry.
Here. All right. Well, now we're gonna let William say his part first, and then you can explain your part.
All right. So AI recognizes music as an architecture that human beings feel comfortable in. And if you show them, take them on a tour from room to room, you can structure acoustic space in a certain way. Okay. And AI has figured out how to make textured and targeted architecture and music.
Physical modeling synthesis for sure. Yeah, you can totally emulate the
Like
the
the idea
percussion.
of a 12-year-old today getting money on their birthday and waiting to go on Saturday afternoon on their bike to the record store to go fucking buy a record. Like what? Like, but that emotional journey and that investment has not been imprinted on the child with the investment of, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a magical act buying a record. I mean, you got to make a choice.
Yeah, there's a journey in and of itself. It's true. But wait, so
And
Aiden. Oh
it's
yeah,
like
sorry.
voting. It's like voting. They want us to believe that we feel the gravity of the pull of the lever, you know, but we don't. No one does. You only feel the arguments that you're going to confront when you tell people who you did vote for. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's no gravity in making the vote, but there is pushback from defending it, and that's
Well,
I think that's really backwards, right?
we should get to that in a second. But Aiden, you were gonna say that you felt like AI hasn't been mastered. Do you want to explain that a bit? What you were trying to say? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. I can't unmute you. You have to unmute yourself. I can only show you the door. There it is.
Well, I'm giving a image. I put an image of an Easter egg for Big Bird to get, and it's funny is that Big Bird is something that this big huge image video model cannot really recognize. That's Big Bird. That is Big Bird, and it can't really recognize that Easter egg is an Easter egg. So it will have to develop its own Easter egg, it'll just generate Easter eggs for it to eat instead of, like, the prompt was giant big bird pecking with beak at Easter egg. And it was like my kind of thing of, like, they can kind of do some pretty good prompts. Sometimes you'll get, like, very good, weird women with flowing hair in the desert. That's very good. A lot of these models can do that. But, somewhat complex subject, indirect, subject, direct object, statement, it has a hard time creating a scene of that, or, make it look artistic or kind of good, or it has difficulty getting very common sense prompts that have prepositions in them, or, like, that are a little bit more complex than just saying a blue ocean with a walrus in it. Like,
Yeah, I made this one yesterday.
this reminds me of, like, those early 2017-ish, like the
go for.
This one's got like 3 minutes or so. I have a lot of really long ones, but some of them I was trying to keep chill.
One of my first AI videos I made was, have you ever read Game of Thrones?
No, I haven't read it.
Well, there's, like, there's in Clash of Kings, the second book, Daenerys has these she goes goes to a bunch of mystics, and they give her a drink that gives her a lot of visions. And that was my first idea for an AI idea, was just to write out all the visions and then just see what it gets out. Like, but that was like 2017, 2018. the first liquid diffusion. You know.
Yeah, I like what Deforum does but the problem is also, you have to really choose your geometries. Like it should be. This is something William. You do math. If you do that, this is just using like a wave function so that it zooms in while moving slightly the x and y coordinates to give you just sort of a slight movement, right?
Well, yeah, for the diffusion to work.
But you can have it.
That's
You gotta
the
be
secret.
aesthetic.
The secret of teaching math is the 10,000 hours of algebra, man. Like, it's like 10,000 hours of Gradius. You know what I mean? Like this little spiel you're showing me is like nothing compared to like, the levels of Gradius that you used to like be able to destroy when you were in a zone back in the day,
Mm-hmm. I used to love oscillators too.
I think that cognitive pathway that was developed in 80s video games was, obviously prophesied by, not prophesied, maybe just exemplified by Eddie Van Halen, the last of the true guitar voice video game, and truly fractal like this is, Eddie is more fractal than Hendrix ever was, and definitely fractal in the way that Zappa touched on. And I think the only one who ever really got the fusion of Eddie and probably Trey, but that's another.
Pretty epic spiritual mystic.
Yeah, man, right the tops, like the best. You can't fuck with Frank. How can you fuck with Frank?
His house, man. His house seems so sweet. I want his house. And he has all the records. His boxes and boxes of records. So many recordings. Well, chess can be cheated. I think chess is also one of those games where it's like you're competing for like a scarcity resource, whereas like Catan is maybe more interesting because it's that tile base. I feel like.
Well, Catan, there is that you have to work with somebody, get something. So you have these you have agents. Yeah, this is called multi-agent, learning environments, Marl. And you have there's a new thing of getting agents that can kind of work with other people or not. They kind of have to help another person in order to win. They have to persuade people to win, which is very different. Kind of a different strategy than you see in chess. What's going on?
With what?
Oh, I thought there was a problem.
No problem. We're good.
Yeah.
I'm scrambling for a charger.
Charger? That sucks.
But I think I got one.
What happened?
I think I'm good.
Did everyone get their charger?
80s video games, man. It's a type of OCD risk reward system is utterly unique. I think it bleeds over to 90s games, but it.
Yeah.
He might have gotten that either.
And I think that it's pretty clear that type of programming was designed to weed out and identify specific cybernetic almost I hesitate to say it, but I think it's pretty accurate, but it's like there's a certain kind of autism that goes hand in hand with coding. Am I wrong? No?
Probably.
I don't know. Yeah, I suppose. I feel like autism as an adjective for anything is kind of that's very big now. That's a
It's
very
tough. It's tough to broadly just say that. But I think in the 80s and 90s, they were looking for those types of brains to code. Those
yeah.
that's beyond shorthand in a courtroom. It's not editors. It's not journalists. It's this cold, detached data entry type thing, right?
Do
But
you
it's
remember
still
in Rain
creative.
Man? In Rain Man, there's this scene where like he can't handle people, and so he takes them into a casino with his little handheld television, and so he can stare at his television while he's in the casino, and he's fine.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
And
what?
and it's this weird. It's the '80s, so it's this weird thing. They're like,
What
oh,
the
weird.
fuck?
He's-
Really? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
And it's just
Holy
everybody.
shit.
Yeah, and this is
Rain
before-
Man
Have you
today.
been in a casino recently? Holy fuck.
No, but everybody's Rain Man today. That's the
Everyone's
deal.
Rain Man on their iPhone.
Yeah, and it's like that scene doesn't translate right because it was so alien. Was the point? It was like, wow, that's like how.
God
this guy
damn,
actually
that's
lived.
so good, dude.
But it's funny is that computer programming, the funny thing, the people that make, run Python, because Python's a little bit different than, C++, where C++, it's all there. There's a few good libraries. There's like 4 libraries you use. But other than that, you don't have all these add-ons. But Python, there's a lot of add-ons. You're constantly putting in different libraries. But they purposely made the font. They made everything about it user-friendly. So you're not like, on a Linux kernel.
Think about successful brand names and think about successful internet spheres. And when you think of a successful brand name, think of the ones that you attribute a song or a, you know what I mean, like a jingle with. Do we have
I
one
think
with
Blank
Google?
Lamont would comment that.
Do we have one with Yahoo?
They made Python's.
So why do
font.
people not know Python? People don't know Python, but Python's everywhere.
Yeah, but they made it. It became accessible because they just simply changed the font and made it look cooler or girlier.
I know, but I'm saying is, why does nobody know Python, even though it's everywhere?
I don't know why people can't just do, for every I in X, print A.
First there was C, right? Well, first it was basic and everything else, but let's start with C. Like when C happened, it was really interesting and really comprehensive, but not for visual programming. So C++ tried to make additions so they could deal with visual programming, which was interesting because there was a lot of ways that could go. It could be vector based, it could be bitmap based, and there's all different things, whether you're looking at a picture, which is a JPEG, or whether you're doing all sorts of geometry. And so the C++ had a lot of library asset built into it that was complicated. And so Java said, let's just have a language where you can call repositories. And that's completely different than JavaScript. That's just stealing the name. But Java just thought of this originally. Like, we'll have Oracle, Sun Microsystems. If we need it, we'll call it. If we don't need it, we won't call it. And that way we can avoid on these major servers installing bulk and extra processing and all this nonsense. And eventually, they created C# in 2000, right? Which was trying to fix all of the problems. And I think C# is a really undersung hero in coding. It's kind of weird. Like, Microsoft did one good solid besides making a hackable Xbox as they made C#. But Python emerged probably around like 1998, 1999. And at that time, there really was this beginning of concepts like the Internet of Things, and there's, already existing like web HTML language. So Python became really useful because you could implement it with HTML and you could call upon all these other assets and you could cross. So it kind of replaced Java. But it was such a hacker language, right? Because not something that was being used really for the front end of things per se. You had a lot of people at Google using Python. You have a lot of things that are written in Python. Everything about, Raspberry Pis, I think, is the joke. Is probably the Python.
Well, RQ is usually its own thing.
But yeah, any of these like system on a chips or anybody that was doing like web apps or people that were designing things for cameras, like I think the Red used Python for a lot of their stuff where they're doing their raw processing. So like Python's used in a lot of things, and at this point it is like I would say it's ubiquitous, but it's not for whatever reason, like it's not a perfect language, right? And I think a lot of people who write code want something like Rust, which is a more perfected language because it has privileges and recall repository privilege. So if I were to like look at something, the time I look at it saves the original file, and then you can't see it again because there's revision history. There's a new file that's created. All these things that are built into Rust that are replacing.
Why would you need that?
Oh,
How would you
I
use
think
that?
that would be a fucking pain in the ass to
So
do.
no, I mean Rust does it automatically, and so it's perfect for like major data centers that are worried about like major changes all the time. You have constant revision history of everything that's ever created, the entire code all the way. And if AI is picking up and reading all this code, it's easier to see the process of how it's designed, what's happening, how the changes are working. So it's easier for it to look through revision history. What do you say? Sorry, Will, I can't hear you. Is your hand on your phone? I can't.
Would you be using this in a personal way?
Rust? Yeah, you can use Rust for making, like, let's say you're going to make like a server that's connected to some sort of equipment to search if there's a tsunami coming, right? You might use Rust like for the backend language instead of Python, because then you have revision history in case there's like a data like corruption, and you have every step along the way saved, and it's actually like watertight. If the data is corrupted, you have a larger percentage chance of saving the original files up to the point.
All right,
like
so
a black box.
here's a good jumping point to something maybe that makes sense for me. So like in the early 80s, Kubrick talked about this editing program that allowed him to like upload a scene 17 times, and he could put in time codes and look at this edit and then just shift without ever cutting the film. Right? It was just all digital, right? So this was his AI, this editing system. Is Rust like a digital simulation system for markets and shit, where you just run simulations and then you generate reports of like the top 3 most like optimal or predictive results? Is that all this AI shit is being used for right now?
Well, you got mass simulations in that. AI is usually used to say, oh, this mass simulation, oh, it looks like this is going to fail or everyone's going to lose money. That's the type of thing, AI is used for. Is that person in this picture wearing a hat? There is a mass simulation thing, and that was a big thing in the, I guess, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s.
I don't think I explained something
Monte
right
Carlo
also.
simulations. That used to be a big thing. You would see this in the aerospace. You would see this in chemistry, where they would just have millions of different, simulations or little points that would be like, okay, we're going to do this chemistry set or this atom at this point with this velocity moving around. And they would just play all these different, scenarios out.
I was gonna say with Python there's a couple of things though. So one of the things with Python is that because it's like using this repository language, you have errors often if you don't have the correct version. Like maybe you're on version 4 and they say, oh, this only works because of certain things that are archaic that were written in GitHub with version 3.2 of the repositories.
Oh my
so
God,
that doesn't. That only happens. That happens with Python a lot. The other thing is the GIL global system that it uses for managing is not capable of selective hyperthreading, or where you can choose between multi-threads how much processing you need on particular threads. So it makes it like the performance of Python is also slowed. You can usually back into GPU, but that doesn't always translate when you need CPU performance for certain calculations.
And then you got Python
real-time operations,
where they'll just do it in C++ and then they'll just translate it into Python, because there's certain lookup things like lookup tables that it's easier to do in a different language, and then they'll just translate that back into Python. But that's pretty big. But
yeah,
it
so
is
I think
interesting.
the ideal thing is just like now you're going to be able to write the code you want what you want to happen, and then translate that. Like right now, there's a Roblox writer for kids to use for game design, and you tell the AI like, I want a game where if you hit the person, they lose 10% of their health until they run out of health, and it writes the code for you, and you're able to use that. So like it's very quickly becoming, it doesn't matter, and we're gonna get to like an efficient language that's figured out on its own that we don't need to understand. But
Andreas, you were a big 3D printer, right?
I do love to 3D print.
All right.
Pretty big
So
Those basketball Instagram videos making the pre-printed basketball, so kind of interesting.
it's a limitless, dimensionless canvas for discovery, right? And I think AI is the exact same way. It's like just a matter of how you choose to use it and how you choose to sculpt your project. You know, people are saying that ChatGPT 4 has been out for, you know, what, a year or 6 months or 8 months, and it hasn't had an update or some shit, or hasn't broken ground. But like the amount of, like, it's like having a secretary. It's like saying, hey, go research 10 websites, aggregate information, turn it into a spreadsheet, define the vocabulary at a lexile of 1100 and give it to me in my email. Done. It used to take you like 6 hours and shit. Now it gets done in like
really
3 minutes.
valued SQL back in the day.
Now it's done in 3 minutes. You can then, and there's even shit that you can turn that spreadsheet into a fucking guided PowerPoint. Done. 2 minutes. That saves you 10, 12 hours in your week. And then you can focus that 4 hours extra on like presenting the motherfucker. You know what I mean? So like there's these elements that we don't see in a very I
hate to break it to you though, it because it does all that work, it just means they're going to have other things to work on. I mean, you can just do this PowerPoint. Oh, I want more ideas.
What I don't think people understand is this is going to be like you know how you till the soil and shit. This is going to put like more nutrients and more care into the soil. So like the people that we produce, we should be like graduating 1960s seniors in high schools, not 2020 seniors in high schools. Like we're graduating like 1420s seniors in high school because they've been so left out of this progression. You know what I mean? We don't know how to use the technology in schools, and when we do, it's gonna change fucking everything, man. Hopefully we're fucking around for that shit.
They already use this technology at schools.
Well, so like William's a teacher, so like, what do you experience as a teacher in school right now with the technology, right?
Wait, what grades?
I teach fucking freshman and sophomore math, dude.
Do you do the algebra 2 of that group, or like the pre-cal, or the?
I do algebra 1, algebra 2 with a smidge of geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Seth just made it in. We're just hearing about the technology being used in schools and how advanced or not advanced it is. And what is it like, Will?
Well, the whole idea is this. You can get success out of students in the short term in mathematics, in which they will regurgitate what you show them on a test. But will they remember it in a state testing situation later on down the road? No. Will they remember it next year when you talk about it? No. But you had a substantial percentage regurgitate, and you had a substantial percentage turn in work. How come the imprinting of the knowledge doesn't stay in the brain? There's this sort of traumatic muscle that has been developed in the youth where they can retain things for a certain specific OCD kind of reason, you know, if there's a consequence. But then once the consequence has been eradicated, they lose it. So the battle has been, how do you get them to start speaking the language of math again? Because they haven't. I mean, if you run into adults and you get them to do math, it's like there's been a fender bender and you have to exchange fucking insurance papers. Like there is a vetting of the numbers every time that Americans do math right now that is just like, it's troubling, but it speaks to a cognitive place that is absent in our schools. And
the answer video games, fam? I mean, like, isn't it
well,
just learning that it's math? Procedural
There's
generated
cognitive
math.
engagement, and there's cognitive consequences, and there's ways to use technology. And I have tested out a lot of different things in those territories. I mean, I had 3 different flat screens with an Xbox, a PlayStation, and a Switch hooked up in my math classroom. I was doing everything to try to engage these motherfuckers. You know what I mean?
The Learning
it wasn't
Game Center.
working.
The Learning Company. You guys remember that company?
The Learning Company, no.
Okay, you know the people that made like Oregon Trail?
Oh yeah, of course. The Minnesota
And
Games
Super
Company.
Seeker?
Minnesota made MECC made Oregon Trail, but this
Okay.
is like that. This is like a Palo Alto version. Sweet. Soft key.
Yeah,
That
so
one.
these
Carmen
there
Sandiego.
was this time that they spent, these games are very basic. They're not that complicated to make.
I mean, Carmen Sandiego, you had to actually be in the CIA, I'm pretty sure, to understand her life
Like
story.
you actually had, it was like they
That's
had
a complicated, at least
on it, like playing the game.
ideologically, there's a lot to Carmen Sandiego. All right, but keep going.
But a lot of those games, like, there was like Ward Muncher, Super Seeker with gadgets and gizmos. That was a very interesting game in 2nd and 3rd grade. That's how I learned about currents. I don't think I actually like really remember, like I kind of remember, batteries, okay, cations, anions, that type of thing. But there was
Math for the Real World was a great game. Remember that game?
There
Math for
was
the Real
like a
World?
lot of games that were developed in the mid 90s to early 2000s.
Math for the Real World, you had like this con artist agent, and you kept like spending money on the tour, and you either didn't make any money at the end of the tour because you wasted it all, or you got good enough at math to make sure you weren't wasting money.
That's pretty epic. I like that.
Math for the Real World, bro. It was a great game.
LemonadeStand.com. Lemonade Stand. There's like the 1970s version of that game.
Sam loans her spare guitar to the headlining group. They share their profits with your band. Earn $75.
I had a cousin who opened up one of those little fruit punch lemonade stand things, but he called it Lemonade Stand. So if you bought one of his lemonades, he would follow you to your car after you bought the lemonade. Like he would stalk you like a stand, and then he would try to like chisel like an extra few bucks out of you.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
But like those games, guess who actually destroyed that whole industry? He's on Shark Tank.
Mark Cuban?
No, Kevin O'Leary. That's actually how he became a billionaire.
Mr. Wonderful? Mr. Wonderful?
Yeah, the bald guy. That's always defending Trump now. Yeah, he did this thing of he bought the Learning Company, and then his whole idea was sell as many of these computer games to all of these public schools where all the teachers don't actually go on the internet or don't actually play video games, and they just put all their effort into doing that, and then they fired all the computer programmers. He made $1 billion or $2 billion off of that, and then the Learning Company after 4 or 5 years was completely worthless.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't really make new games every 2 or 3 years, develop new games every year because, schools, they didn't upgrade their software ever, like at all. It was very difficult for them. It was very tedious. If you remember, like downloading games onto Macintosh or Windows, there was no drive. There was no cloud drive or anything like that. Each computer had to have the game on it already pre-installed, or it had to be on a floppy disk. Couldn't be done. So Learning Company got destroyed, and it's been very, you have these like universe simulator games and KSP coming around, but those are very steep learning curve games. KSP, what Kerbal Space Program? You've never seen look, Google KSP right now. I think, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, they would definitely agree with me that KSP is probably the most amazing engineering game ever created. But even this game is very complicated. This is like going into different worlds, all on, Newtonian, with rockets. It's very difficult for a fourth or fifth grader to make it. There's all these very complicated, type games that they're kind of thinking about making.
Yeah, but
So I have some thoughts on this whole the meaning. That's it sounds like what BK. What's your name, BK?
William.
William. Nice to meet you, William. So it seems like you were talking about how it's hard to get people motivated in learning math. You're a math teacher. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I taught English for a few years. Well, like mostly a year and a half in Taiwan, and I kind of had a similar problem. And it kind of brings you into this like psychological question, like what motivates brains to learn? You know what I mean? And so I've put some thought into this. I'm very interested in game design ever since I was young, and I've designed a couple of card games. I've tried to incorporate educational aspects into the game. But I think that probably one of the biggest things when it comes to learning, like the obstacle to learning, is people have to understand why what they're learning is relevant. Like, how does this help me, right? I think math is so abstract for most people, they can't connect it to their other goals, right? What do you think of that?
Well, the thing about math that's so unique is that it's a language, right? And if it was Spanish or French or German, and we could construct an environment in which you would speak those languages in the home, and you would hear those languages in the town square, and you would hear the languages on TV, and you'd hear the languages on the radio, then people would learn the language, and people would not have to worry about like the grammar and the spelling of math, which is what algebra is, right? It's a foundationary jumping point. The fact of the matter is that mathematics has been sucked out of everyday experience for most matrix-dwelling children, and their adults in their lives do not supplement the environment with mathematics in a healthy way, and almost avoid it in a certain sense, almost like religion nowadays. Religion and mathematics, it's like, oh no, hey now. But it is a cognitive pathway. It is a language, and we are suffering because of that. It underpins so much of how we deconstruct anything that we talk about. Is almost like a mental accounting for certain geometries. That's why Kubrick's The Shining is so powerful, right? Because he just throws that in your face. He's like, the architecture doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that the most interesting thing about your response for me was that you call math a language. And that brings me back to my elementary school. And, I don't know about you, but for me, like Spanish lessons were a huge part of, elementary school. And like just retrospectively thinking about my experience, as a kid, I could never understand why the Spanish language was relevant. Like I look out into my world, it's a bunch of English everywhere, a bunch of English speakers. I'm like, why do I need to learn Spanish? And I didn't have the motivation to learn it and take it seriously because of that. Right?
Yeah, there's no social indicators that tell you, oh, your math is off, this is a bad thing. There's no hot zones that you trigger. You can get by, and people will empathize, and people will understand. But oh my God, I think the next 15 years of our country is going to suffer in such a way because of it. It's going to be profound. It's going to be so silly when you look at the numbers at it. It's going to be like, how did this happen?
Those like Zoomers not like learning anything during COVID.
Yeah,
that was so surprising. Like, when I was in 6th grade, I went to Japan for 2 months. My mom had a little Fulbright thing. I learned typing there. and I bought like a computer game that taught me a little bit about history and stuff like that. Like, you know, kind of like Carmen Sandiego. None of these kids could do that. Like, just learn how to type when you're in 5th and 6th grade, like during COVID.
No.
They just like what? They just typed with their like two.
You do understand that most of these children are sent home with a laptop, and you have to understand that the laptop is like the encyclopedia phone. It's like the whole set. And you know how like when people have the encyclopedia in their home, they don't read every fucking volume. Like, these kids don't know what a fucking laptops are for. There's no saving of documents and, you know, organizing of data, and you know what I mean? It's like they don't know what this big brick of a phone is for. You got to teach them that shit. It's so bizarre, man. I mean, I'm just trying to paint like a legitimate picture of what I've experienced, you know, like on a massive scale.
So what do you think of like a goal-based educational paradigm, where instead of just teaching people math, you give them a problem, and then they can see, oh, this is an important problem, and they have to learn the math in order to solve the problem.
Well, this is okay. So this is a good jumping point. And so for me, I believe that mathematics can be taught in a 19th century classroom, which would be desks, chalkboard, textbook, pencil, notebook. That's it. If you just had kids in that environment for 80 minutes a day, 3 days a week, 4 days a week for 4 years, right? They would learn math. They really would. But we're not going to get to the 19th century classroom, all right? I think if you supplemented the 19th century classroom not with 20th century technology, which is calculator, laptop, video, audio, I think if you supplemented it with 21st century technology, which is VR, and you put kids in,
like, do balancing experiments.
You get the whole idea just instantly. You're just like, oh yeah, you put them in the situation with measuring the shadow of the flagpole, the acceleration. Everything is modeled literally right in front of them, and they're only in it for 5 to 10 minutes, but they see the modeling, and then they go to the abstract and they make sense of it.
Do these kids not go onto YouTube just to see like the little diagrams being made, like in like related rates? That's something.
But what's better? It's just saying, what's better? Are you gonna have you know, RC Cola, or are you gonna have Coca-Cola? You know what I mean? The VR is the Coca-Cola.
But but what I'm saying is, like, with a class of 30, like, couldn't you just show them a YouTube video? Do they really not pay attention at all?
Yes. It doesn't work anymore. It's like, astounding. Okay. It's astounding. It's like if you went to like the pond and you dropped in the best fucking fish food, right? And you're expecting the frenzy, it just floats there. No one's nibbling. No one gives a shit. The media landscape has been so blighted. You can't do movie day. You can't get more than like 3 people to watch the movie you put on. Doesn't register at all in that room. Their electronic receptors are firing at such a different level that
they can't even watch like a 90-minute movie.
No, not even close.
Can they not?
It would be a riot if you said no phones. Here's a movie. It would be a riot. Oh, deaths would be thrown.
Are you in an inner city school, or is this more of a?
Oh, we got the hot questions now.
Well, no, this is very difficult. Like, you know, I went to the prominent school of the country type thing, and there were still kids that acted like thugs. Like, you know, that would have been.
Okay, so language is language, and I get what you're saying. Let me just tell you this. teenagers are teenagers wherever you go.
Yeah, I know.
And when they're being sold a load of shit for an extended period of time, eventually it's, you don't need Wilhelm Reich to tell you what happens into a fucking sardine box that they pack these poor kids into. It gets troublesome if you don't have legitimate content to move them through. You know what I mean? So if you bullshit them, it's going to bubble over. To what extent? You know what I mean? All I'm saying is if they have option to their phones and you put on a movie, they're going to go to their phones after 5 fucking minutes. You're going to have no one watching the movie after 15 or 20 minutes. Doesn't matter if it just doesn't matter.
Do you know what they're doing on their phones? That's so
They
captivating.
don't know what they're fucking doing. Do we? They're just like hitting the button. You know what I mean? They're just.
Do they watch porn on it, or is that like something like because no, by the time I'm in the 11th and 12th grade, kids are like sending really funny porn gifs as a joke of like.
They're playing games like baseball games and fucking
they're
card
playing
games.
Fucking like those.
They're
like,
doing they're doing text messaging. They're doing Instagram. They're doing who knows what the fuck they're doing? They're doing just things that update quickly. YouTube, just shorts. They're just swiping. It's just like this.
I know that's the big thing with kids. Like they don't want to watch YouTube videos. They want to watch YouTube shorts.
Yeah, they just want to. What I say is this: wouldn't you and I kill to go back to some fucking boring Thursday night TV, and you were just flipping the channels between commercials of Seinfeld? Like Seinfeld's on, and the commercials hit.
Oh,
just flipping through the channels. You're just surfing, just looking for bullshit. It's like. That's what the internet became. It's like I can go back to the main line at any time, but I'm just like I got these 2 minutes to kill, and I'm surfing the cable sphere because I got 70 channels now. It was really like a dialed in like overload of power. Show about nothing, and then a 2-minute break about nothing. But it was like
literally before the internet. I get nightmares just remembering how fucking boring. Pseudo boring my life was before the internet. I literally do.
I'm not disagreeing with you, my friend. It's hard to understand how it could be replaced at this point. How we could extricate it.
This way, like I lived kind of in the country, but not fully in the country when I was a kid. So once I got that access of I have something I can talk to, I can see different things, I can watch different things, and I am not beholden to anyone or any type of control of, some weird SJW Marxists telling me what I can and can't watch on Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
I was free from all of that.
Pretty amazing. That's undeniable. That's true.
Like the big thing that really, I guess, saved me from huge just complete obliteration of the self, or that suicidal thought was like, the Pepe Frog Groyper thing that happened in 2014 and really just started, kept on going. That was like something that really helped save me. And I don't think that could have ever been something that was pre-2005. You didn't really have it. You kind of had that.
Fill that in for me more. So 2014 happened. 2014 happened. Nick Fuentes happened. And that was, explain that to me.
Well, I think the giant frog, the frog thing that we always talk about, and I'm sorry, I may not be talking about something politically incorrect, but it's, how we go in waves of like being really woke, or people moving away from bad problems. And then once they move away, they have kids. Those kids are not adept at knowing those problems, so they're more liberal about those things, so they have a history that doesn't talk about those problems at school. And so once they clash with those problems, you get this meme renaissance or this reactionary, pseudo reactionary thing that happens generationally. And I think that happened with a lot of the riots. People just said, I'm sick and tired of all this bullshit. Like, I'm sick and tired of the lies that they've been having forever. But yeah, no, it's very, they had that right after 9/11. People had the same, kind of reactions. I don't know what's going on. Can you guys say anything?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough data to know how this is affecting the next generation, but I lean more optimistic. I think humans are pretty adaptable. I think that we're kind of naturally passionate about things. I think that the riots and all that, it shows that there's like an innate passion within people. And maybe politics and social issues, these things can act as like a goal. And if people have a goal, then they're going to progress towards the goal. And maybe they don't have a motivation to watch a movie in the classroom because they don't know how that connects to what they're passionate about. But once they see something they're passionate about, they'll move towards that.
They're lazy.
No.
No?
It's so. Are you fans of Mcluhan?
No, I don't know who that is.
Marshall Mcluhan?
I don't know.
Andreas, are you still here?
Andreas is having computer problems right now.
All right. So Marshall Mcluhan talks about sensory ratios in the human brain. So we all understand that in the form of a stereo, right? You can adjust treble, bass, and mid. And he says that human brains have a equalizer just like a stereo. He says that print culture had forced us into a paradigm, a cognitive paradigm that had killed the ear, and that the computer was sent to resurrect the ear, which the ear is acoustic space, which he said would be the domain of the Holy Spirit. So, okay, Marshall Mcluhan, the medium is the message, the death of the ear. How is this connected to what we were talking about? I could get back there, but it'll take a second.
Wait, who's read Dune?
Nope. I watched the movie, though.
Did you read Dune?
I watched the movies.
All right.
There he is.
Oh, he was backing it out. That would have been an interesting book to read in high school if it was allowed. I don't think it could be allowed now because the villain was a pederast that liked fucking and killing 14-year-old.
Oh, wow. Shit.
No, that was the big thing. The problem with that movies. I'm sorry, I said the F word. I shouldn't have said it.
I remember why I was talking about Mcluhan, but keep going. I missed my exit, so you keep going.
Well, I was just talking about Mcluhan. He was talking about voice and being, the soul. And I was just like, well, okay, what would be something engaging? That's something that you would like to hear, like a novel at school. And I thought Dune. But now they only do things like To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye, which is kind of...
Well, reading is one thing and print is another thing. And I think that they should just let the kids read print and get into the world of print. I don't know why they force them to read these 16th century bullshit fucking legacy pieces. It speaks to the fascism of print that I think is unconscious and on the way out, but it's not going to go quietly. There's going to be a last stand. I guess I was talking about Mcluhan in the sense that all of us have jumped into this medium of cyberspace and we podcast and we speak and we put our voices out there for whatever reason. Okay. And I was going to ask you, Is there a voice out there that is in the internet sphere that you think has risen above all voices, that right now you think is the dominant voice? Used to be a very easy way to say that about radio in your local area.
Yeah, like
whether or
Rush.
not you would debate it, but television, there used to be a number one voice.
I
And
really wanted it
movies,
to
there
be
used to
me,
be a
but
number
my
one
voice.
voice.
Can you
But
even hear
does
me?
does
Is it
do you
working?
have a number one? Because we all are like amateurs in this department, and the fact that we testify or bear witness to whatever truth we have in this domain. Is there someone doing it better than you, or someone that you aspire to be out there?
I would say BAP, kind of. Like, you know who Bronze Age Pervert is?
No.
I helped him write part of his book, like a little bit. I gave him some of the research for it.
It's okay now? Okay.
Yeah.
BAP.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Seth, do you have one?
you're talking about like are you talking about like a role model in the public sphere?
Just
Or
a
what are you
voice
trying to-
out there who broadcasts on a regular basis, puts their voice out there, and kind of has earned your respect. Is like, wow, that's a consistent voice. I can always count on that take.
Yeah, not really. Like there's a hierarchy. Like I respect some voices more than others, but you know, I think it's I think it's probably wise to be a little bit cautious about not promoting any voices too high. You know what I mean?
So nothing's cutting through. Andreas, is there anyone for you?
Just myself.
John
Yeah,
Stewart
you motherfucker.
used to be
Besides you,
huge back
motherfucker.
in the day.
Besides
We
you, is
say-
there anyone that you would elevate?
John Stewart, just because
lots of
he was
people.
huge back in the day. That's all.
Jon Stewart, okay.
I don't respect his opinions at all, or him now. But
I guess
back
Trey
in the day-
Parker.
Trey
does his
Parker?
thing. Yeah, he does his thing.
In the world of podcasting? He
Not in
podcasts?
podcasting, but Trey Parker makes South Park his way. I think that's a model. In the world of
Okay,
podcasting,
so just
it's
for-
like all of my friends.
the guys that do Rick and Morty.
No, just like this 3-hour-long conversation thing that's been going on for like the last 10, 15 years. Who stands out?
That? I don't know, like Higher Side's all right.
Higher
guess.
side, okay.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's important. Tim Pool's
Joe
important.
Rogan is important, yes.
Tim Pool, I mean, he used to be very basic. Well, he still
What?
is basic.
I think basic became based. People really like that idea of like a well-founded.
Okay, so
interest.
we're talking about a medium. Anyone can flip on a switch and turn on a microphone and get out there and put their voice
Alex
out there.
Jones,
It's like
of course.
Alex Jones for real, respect. Made his mistakes,
Yeah, that
But as
documentary.
far as,
though,
like,
was a
just-
documentary called "The Truth of Verse Alex Jones." I was like, wow.
This is kind of like
Way to
an
miss the point.
MMORPG, right? This podcast universe, right?
Yeah,
We're all avatars.
see that happening. We're all trying to.
I was thinking of somebody that could be a kind of a person that people kind of didn't really respect, but he was always there. The cringe atheist movement. TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist.
TJ Kirk, I don't know that one.
Okay, before the internet or like bread YouTube, there used to be guys that would just talk about atheism on YouTube. This used to be a big thing, and they're completely
He's got a
they had
fedora.
no self-awareness how annoying they were talking about it. But he got really big as this kind of like wannabe comedian / guy, back in the day. But a lot of his content is cringe, and he even respects that. But
So are you guys atheists or not?
No.
no, but I would never want to associate with that. But he kind of just held so much of the atheist, the thing in early YouTube. I mean, he was like a suction to that.
Yeah.
He's kind of like Ninja for Twitch streamers. Back in Ninja's not that big anymore.
But Aiden, you don't consider yourself an atheist, even though you're not like super religious. You're like.
I mean, I'm religious, but
You are? Like, how are you religious? How would you call yourself religious? What's religious about you? Do you go to church ever?
Certain things, like, I do a lot of research.
Have you gone to church? Like, how often have you gone to church? Were you ever a churchgoer?
No, I don't go to church.
Okay, so because like this guy's like he quit going to like church where they make you like pay money to go. Their version of religious is very like specific. I think your idea of religious is a little more like spiritual, maybe.
You gotta build up the kingdom, Andreas.
Well, I mean,
money.
like, I
That
definitely
money is building the kingdom.
No, there is definitely spiritual people are also people that are kind of like, they're backboneless. They won't really fight for something. They don't lack the emotional rigor or the military rigor of just going up and doing something every weekend.
People without spirituality or people with spirituality?
No, I mean people that say
that was not a good advertisement for religion.
Wake up on time to go to church.
I disagree. There's a breath of Christ right there. You don't understand. If you read the Word of Wisdom, it talks a lot about there are herbs that are God's herbs are to be utilized. I in defense of love is the law, but with religion though it's a little different. If you're building a religion that's telling you and that's why I was curious, Aiden, if you meant like atheists or religious people with that, because atheists have a lot of belief. Like, to believe that there's no God, I think takes a lot more belief than it does to believe there probably is something making sense of things out there, right? You think about it, like if you believe that there's, I don't know what it is, but there's probably like agnostic or something like that, super easy. Like, I don't know, there's probably something.
Well, I think the advantage
versus you're like, no, I believe there's not anything.
Atheists have the best face musculature of all people.
It's more faith than I have.
They don't even want to read into it that much.
I mean, you have to believe. No, to be an atheist, really, to believe there is not a God, you have to believe in a nothing. You have to believe in nothing. That's a lot of belief. That's more faith than most Christians have, right? Most Christians don't really know what they believe. They're like, well, I don't know what's going to be like in heaven.
Come on, don't you think that like being an atheist and believing in God are the same fucking thing, really?
They all wear the same type of
Okay. No.
believe in God.
No.
They wear
in public.
Atheists wear fedora hats. They wear fedora hats.
Wait, what's the group consensus? I want to agree. I agree with the group consensus. I'm waiting to find out.
The consensus is that atheism has a lot of inductive reasoning behind it, and technically all epistemology reduces to inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is pattern recognition. The problem is the religious epistemology, it overuses the inductive reasoning to where they see patterns that are not there, i.e. God. God is a pattern that is not actually there. The ancient people were always saying, oh, look, the cloud is moving through the sky. That's like God. And look, there's the God of lightning over there. The
if
book
only
of
you were
Job,
raised Catholic, dude. I'm so sorry.
This is the history of the word God. The history of the word God is a substitute for natural phenomena, right? Every time we see something we don't understand, ooh, that's the magic of God. But then we learn what it is, right? And guess what? Every time we learn what it is, there's no God there. And so we're just constantly debunking like all of the various definitions of God. What does that set us up with? It sets up with a pattern of evidence for human irrationality. Over 6 million years of human history, it's just nonstop. Oh, that's God. No, that's God. No, that's God. No. It's like, why do you think your God is the correct one after millions have been debunked?
Well,
nuance is not debunk.
Yeah. Well, it's usually, they'll, back in the day, especially in the Arabian Peninsula, one guy will just say, this is my God, and my sword is the proof of his existence.
Your what? Your sword?
My sword is his proof of his existence.
Okay, that's an interesting
If you don't
thing.
believe, then your sword will kill you.
What do you think Allah Akbar means? Allah is greater.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was the whole thing back in the day, is that, you hear the voice of God and you make the commandment of his voice into you, and those who don't believe you die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yeah, yeah.
people have a very radical, very different version of
Admiral
what
Akbar.
God is. That's sometimes very different than the kind of Anglo-Saxon
Dude,
atheism that kind of defines it all. But I was going to
Andreas.
point out something that UFO and Sasquatch people will talk about pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
It's the thing of when you see an image and you think it's a face, or you see a blurred...
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia, yo. Yeah, look at. I think they do this on purpose at the Danish electrical outlet.
This is exactly what I was talking about. It's overactive pattern recognition. It's overactive agency detection.
If you think the Danes didn't do this on purpose, you don't understand Lego. But okay.
Like you see a rabbit on the moon. It's like, no, there's no creature there. It's just your pattern recognition is overly tuned, and like for evolutionary reasons that makes sense. It's like you want to find.
You play poker?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so you play Texas Hold'em?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so have you ever been in a Texas Hold'em game, and you sit down to play, and you get the sneaking suspicion that this is not a fair game? There's some collusion going on. Have you ever been in that situation?
No.
Okay.
I only play games with honest people. I don't know who you associate with.
So anyways, I've sat down maybe after a few drinks, and it was a home game, and felt like, you know what? Not so sure if this is a fair deal, right? And so you start looking at the game through a lens of paranoia, right?
Sure.
And you start looking at the numbers, and you start looking at the cards, and you know what? You start playing really good poker. And you start getting results out of your pareidolia, out of perceived conspiracy against you. You're analyzing numbers in a way that you've never analyzed numbers before. You're making decisions. You're getting results. There's a doorway that I think people dismiss with that shit. Yeah, of course, if you fail at it, it's a laughable appendix in a Freudian manual, whatever. But there's a real phenomenon going on there that it is a poetry of architecture or of circumstance that you can tap into, and I think it's dissuaded by our culture.
Dude, I was just watching Andreas. You shared the video of me of the Atonement, the Jewish temple, right? Mm-hmm. And like it was literally saying that the Jews, they would light up like all this incense, and they'd have like this. They'd get the smoke billowing in the temple. And like it was to create the illusion of like a supernatural presence. You see these you see the puffs of smoke moving around. It's like, ooh, something is in the room with us. Ooh, it's so magical. It's like it's this overactive pattern recognition bullshit.
Yeah, is it bullshit or is there a line?
I think you should look up remote viewing.
I'm telling you, when you're just playing cards with some motherfuckers, and you're reading minds, I mean, it feels next to God. It doesn't feel ungodly. It feels very natural. It feels very pedestrian. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel very magical. They got the same information as you.
I'm not seeing any good reasons to believe in God based on poker.
In the plague times, they used to wave incense to have smoke all around them because they thought the smoke would keep away the plague. But apparently there was some truth to this, that the smoke actually did, have especially they use like sage and things like that. It was antibacterial, antimicrobial in the fumes and things. So there's, usually the thing is there's a truth to it, right? Maybe the religious part's the reductionist part, but you're seeing it down the way. The average Joe, his understanding of it. But I keep seeing it from like the Jesuit perspective. When William's talking about it, I'm thinking of Lemaire, who came up with E = MC squared for Einstein, who wore heels, and like, of course, it's going to be a priest who comes up with the Big Bang Theory. And so most of science comes back to religion anyway, right? And so it's not that big of a conflict. It's just the reductionists.
There is a conflict here. Like you can't just, you need, like, the conflict is between type 1 and type 2 errors. That's a statistical thing. Williams can probably explain it better than me. Basically, like everyone is doing pattern recognition. Like that's a thing about humans. The question is, how sensitive are you to doing the pattern recognition? There's always, so like there's a quadrant where you've got like, you think there's a pattern and there is a pattern, ding, 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 the pattern recognition worked. You think there's a pattern, there's no pattern, there's no true pattern. That's overactive pattern recognition. There's an illusion of a pattern. Then there's the opposite bias, right? There's
quadrant gives the right time twice a day. You know what I mean?
Say that again.
Even a dark quadrant gives the right time twice a day. So you're talking about one quadrant of potentiality of truth, right? But there's these random occurrences in the other quadrants that still ring true. They're like
So let me just build out the four quadrants. Right. So like we've got the two pattern recognitions. Now we've got the rejection of the pattern, right? So the atheist bias would say there's no pattern here, but then sometimes the atheist bias will be wrong. There is a pattern there, right? So like, for example, the atheist could say, oh, this incense stuff is bullcrap. And then like, there's actually a benefit there that they missed. They didn't realize that there was a valuable pattern, right? And so that's the gap is between which is more harmful to society, to think there's no pattern, but there is, or to think there's a pattern, but there's no pattern. Yeah, those are the two errors. And so God represents, I think there's an invisible thing here, but there isn't. And then I think there's no God here, but there is. That's the error for the atheist side, right? But you have to apply this to every single belief. So the religious people have all these sets of beliefs, and it's like, if this God pattern is real, therefore we do all these things to society.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
So this gravity exists in our society, whether we like it or not, and the enforcer of this gravity can be atheist or not, right? But where this really blossoms are in families and in schools and in hospitals, because let's face it, families, schools, and hospitals go hand in hand. So there's this whole area of our world, families, schools, and hospitals, that are seemingly not good, right? And what fixes those three things, I don't think anybody knows or anybody has the answer anymore, right?
What fixes what? I missed that.
Families, schools, and hospitals. These are institutions that are in disrepair, that are out of focus for whatever reason. Religion seems to be one of the ways that those three things run well together, but no one is saying it because no one can sell it. No one can replace it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely agree with, like, if you look at most, like, atheist families.
Yeah, so where does atheist families in schools and hospitals, they don't factor, they
have like 20 times higher suicide rate. I mean, they have a higher suicide rate. And a lot of atheists, frankly, they don't reproduce. Like, what?
So
Mayer's, like Bill Mayer's group, like friend group, none of them have kids. They're both a bunch of degenerates who like smoking pot and doing occasional lines of cocaine. That is Bill Mayer's group. Like, he will make fun of it and he'll even call himself a degenerate. But I mean, when you look at it, that group, that whole, type of group, they're very cringy, but they don't have kids. They, their way of finding ways out of depression is usually SNRIs. And I mean that, obviously a lot of religious people take antidepressants too, but a lot of that type of weird, morbidly depressed stuff you see in a documentary, you typically see a lot of it in that artsy group that tend to be atheists.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do.
I have no problem saying that, and I'm around it a lot. And some people, they can't fucking stand it when you just point that out to them, especially if they're.
I would like that.
They're like, "What?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You're too lazy to reproduce."
So there's a lot of problems
You
with
want to
this
see
line
the
of
proof of
reasoning.
divinity? They're actually, procreating, creating more generation. Natural selection. They're having kids.
Sure. So like I half agree with you and I half disagree, right? This is a complicated question, obviously. And
I don't
people
mean
have
to
debated
criticize
this.
your views or anything. I'm just pointing like
I welcome criticism. Criticize me all day long, you know. That's the way we progress. So I think that first of all, like just because like, oh, atheism has bad results and theism has good results, that's not a very good argument in terms of truth. Like the truth doesn't care about your results. You know what I mean? Like you could say something like, oh, if we brainwash people to like think that the government's going to kill them, we're going to get them to like exercise and like run really fast. Like who cares? Like we're talking about truth. We're not talking about results. You know what I mean?
think the truth of how not to get yourself killed, how to prolong your genes is a good enough truth.
So the evolutionary argument for religion, I would agree, is actually pretty strong. But again, the evolutionary argument for religion has nothing to do with the truth value of the religion, right? Right?
But go say it again. You said something kind of like truth value of religion.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just flesh it out a little bit more. The evolutionary argument for religion is basically something to the effect of evolution. It filters out things that are not efficient for survival and reproduction, and especially things that are costly. And religion seems costly, so it should have been filtered out by natural selection if it wasn't valuable for survival and reproduction. But it seems like historically, anthropologically, religion is like a human universal. It's amongst all these different cultures at all these different times. And it's costly. Like these Aztecs, they're building these crazy temples. All these different people are like investing survival resources into religion, which is a very big clue that this project of religion has evolutionary value for survival and reproduction. But the problem is survival and reproduction have nothing to do with the truth, right?
The problem is that truth is not an absolute truth. Logic is a tool, And
I'm going to point out there's a lot of when it comes to human anthropology, and I'm just going to put the UFO conundrum because this is directly connected to everything involved with this.
And Mormonism, apparently, because Bigfoot and King. All right, I'll let you
go.
Well,
I mean, you got, Mormonism, it definitely describes there's, planets where there are other people and they do their own thing. I'm sorry, Seth, if I annoyed you, but but
you are not capable of annoying me.
Yeah, we should take you on a Sunday, just one day, so you imagine what he's been through, what it's like.
Well, you are the least of my worries. You are extremely mild compared to what I deal with on a daily.
Well, I mean, I would say that a lot, I do not mean this in any way like a creationist. I hate when people say this.
We should at some point elaborate on why people in religious communities have post-traumatic stress from being part of those organized communities, regardless of what their beliefs are. People just, if you're in a community and you become a responsible and obligated party within that community with duties, that's going to, and expectations placed upon you, that's going to be, some people will become very stressed out about that.
Yeah. And then, there are women that like going to, psychiatrists and psychologists, and they like to talk about trauma, about being in a conservative religious community. And that
I think in general, though, a lot of atheism is just post-traumatic stress. They're like, yeah, what did religion do for me? Killed my aunt, killed my ancestors.
I have to say something about that.
I got to say something. What's weirder? You're a parent and you raise some kids and you got a 10-year-old, right? And you got an 8-year-old. All of a sudden, your 10-year-old starts getting some fucking interesting thoughts about the fucking universe and shit, right?
Oh no!
What's weirder? If your 10-year-old started reading the Bible and started bringing your family to church, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole family like became part of this church community because your 10-year-old reading the Bible, or your 10-year-old read a book and became an atheist and like brought your family away from the church. And the 10-year-old like led you away from the oppression of the church. Which would be weirder? Or which would be more ludicrous?
Why not both? That's what some, why not both? Do both. Take them away from the apostasy, the great abominable church, while offering a better alternative. You know?
What books could persuade a 10-year-old? We already know the Bible already could, right? We already just admit, like, the Bible.
Are you straight up talking about Joseph Smith right now? You're
10-year-old into that Hollywood script. We're like, of course I can.
I'm lost, bro. Like, so I had a train of thought, and that train like crashed.
What novel? What would be the 10-year-old girl in atheist novel bring family away from the church?
It would be
bring this up.
It would
like,
be the
I want to stab
Madame Blavatsky. It'd be the Young Adventures of Madame Blavatsky. Okay, Seth had a point he was trying to make. I hope you remember.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I do.
Dude.
So
solid question. Except the Bible is capable, and so the second part of my question is moot. It's why is the Bible already acceptable as a book that can like deliver that kind of transcendence, right?
Shakespeare and I think has the
we
word
skip over it.
I want to hear this. We'll get back to the Bible. Let's hear Seth's thing, and we'll go back to the Bible.
William, I think you should question your analogy a little bit. If you're appealing to the wisdom of a 10-year-old, that's a little sus in terms of 10-year-olds are not the best sources of wisdom. My point earlier was connecting Andreas's point with Aiden's point, which is Aiden was saying something to the effect of atheists commit suicide more. Andreas, you're saying the bad results could be connected to PTSD. From what I've read on this topic, the studies seem to correlate. The suicide rates are greater in people who have lost belief, right?
Yeah.
So if you grew up as an atheist with an atheist household, you don't have this trauma of, oh, I thought the universe was like this and I invested my entire life based on this paradigm. Holy crap, all of my paradigm, I've wasted all my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. Like losing belief is more traumatic than never having it to begin with.
But also meaning is lost too, which is to Aiden's point and also William's point about the students he's facing, that there's not something to latch onto that it's like, oh, is this God? Is this God's love? Is this
so just
perfection?
Unless you're like Chinese.
Put the
Chinese and you have your own
non-sociopath cap on that thought.
Not have any of these church. The church.
We've already agreed that there's
one at a time.
Finish this thought. We've already agreed there's at least a book out there that could persuade a 10-year-old to transform their family dynamic. There's an imaginary book out there that could break them in the opposite direction, right?
Golden Compass.
There is a book. There is
Holes by Louis Zacher.
Golden Compass. That is the book. The first.
We're just saying that there is a book. That there's a medium. What I'm saying is this VR
Harry
is this
Potter,
new that is going to push people towards church in a way that's going to be like unbelievable. I think
it's going to be big for about 10 minutes, and then people just become disinterested in it. It's not going to.
No, you're going to have.
That's the problem with programmers, though.
You're going to have
you start opening it to
parts of these really
VR chat's huge.
This is a sacred space in VR. And they're going to be connected to like religious fucking things, dude.
VR chat's pretty huge, and the idea that
what
people.
What the hell are we talking about?
So we were talking about books, and books having the power to transform a family, and a family in need of religion right now is where books should shine. But I think it's VR that's going to dominate, and I just understand.
That's the medium.
VR is like wide open, like unfettered, like South America right now or something. It's unclaimed. VR.
Yeah,
So
well, they are doing that. Xbox.
Well, it
with
wasn't
Xbox
like
happening.
Facebook put a lot of money into it, making
Yeah.
kind of shitty little apps with little like Mark Zuckerberg Wii things,
I
and
could
it
talk
wasn't that interesting.
how the revolution in VR golf is going to triple the revolution in computer chess, and it's going to
VR golf.
Yeah, that's
Listen,
where like the elite are
listen,
meeting right now.
no,
They hang
listen.
out in VR golf because of COVID, right? So they go do the VR golf together.
It's a cognitive pathway that surpasses
Chris
computer
Chan
gambling.
finding women on
Listen. The rush that computer poker gives you is surpassed by VR golf. It really is.
I know way too many guys that do cocaine and then play fucking video poker and lose thousands of dollars every weekend.
This is going to be their AA like 12-step 18-hole championship or something. Like this technology, I'm telling you, once it hits the bloodstream, is like a fucking. There's nothing like it, dude. There's nothing fucking like it because it
changes in reality might not be capturable without like some.
Let me put it this way: you're talking about a religious discipline, right? That they say you should do for several hours a day consecutively, right? That's part of all religious disciplines. Am I wrong? No. All right. Golf is this Scottish. You ever seen Hellraiser? You know what I mean? The Cube. Like this is like
the Cube. Yeah.
So you're saying it's like this is the work the kids are doing. If the AI VR gaming could be used for good, then this is the greatest thing possible because they're doing it all day, every day, the way monks were doing things all day, every day. So
yes.
it should be, and ought to be. All right.
So it's an algorithm of an architectural elegance that's hard to describe unless you are a participant. And so VR gives you this simulated doorway into this architecture, into this equation. I mean, it's a mathematical thing, this VR golf, man. And so I'm telling you, this is going to be the entryway into this. This is going to shape the way people think. I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl recently, but there was a whole game theory thing that came up, and you had a talk show about game theory. No one knows what fucking game theory is, man. And I think anyone who reads the Bible knows exactly what game theory is.
What are you talking about?
Really? You're not following me?
Matthew chapter 6 verse 17, and Jesus walked according to game theory. What?
And we had player B off of
where the hell is game
proscription
theory in the Bible?
Situation C
Man, you're egging them on.
and Dward Mary's second chapter.
Wait. What about
you know when you're playing poker and you got to read
Samson?
You have
Samson.
You go all in. And you got all in, and game theory says that's the only play, and there's no emotional and logical reasoning, but that's just the only play, and you hear the voice and you make a play. That's what the Bible.
You hear a voice? Whoa! You hear a voice when you play poker?
Well, there's a clarity that you call a voice. It's a decision-making mechanism. You know what I mean? And I think game theory allows you to tap into that shit, and the Bible taps you into that shit. So,
okay.
I would take a moment to actually talk about the best ML playing bot of poker, and that was developed by I forget which play it was, but it's like Veritas something bot, and it had this insane the optimal poker strategy is to bluff constantly. Like if you know the odds table.
Matthew 21.
Start, it just becomes bluff on everything, and you eventually you start winning games off of that. I forget it where is Carnegie Mellon, a grad or PhD student who worked at Google for a while. He developed that off of regret minimization tactics.
So like that works for like 3 hours, but after 3 hours,
Matthew 21.
You know what I mean?
Matthew 21 is the fig tree story where Jesus and the fig tree are the players, and the strategy Jesus can choose to bless or curse the fig tree. The fig tree can't choose, but can offer fruit, cooperation, or not.
And he gets a +1 reward if everyone goes to heaven.
That was sly.
I feel like that's one. Solomon and the Two Mothers.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a couple of more examples we can Google, but that sounds like a pretty good set.
David and Goliath.
I mean, game theory seems like a lot of the stories in the Old Testament.
So I should be a little bit more charitable. I apologize, William. Game theory, in my opinion, is essential to morality, and religion is essential to morality. So if you're looking at the generic patterns, you're absolutely right. But if you zoom into to the details, so this is a left brain versus
Prisoner's
right brain
Dilemma.
bias. What about it?
Well, that's a game game theory strategy that sometimes describes altruism or calm the fuck down and not shoot the other prisoner. Like, no, there is a lot of different, strategies of prisoner A has a gun, prisoner B has the gun. Prisoner A will get a 0.2 plus positive feeling if he shoots prisoner B and then blames it on prisoner C. But there is like a 20% chance that prisoner C will be found not guilty and he will be found guilty.
Right.
Like,
so this is actually, I'm going to be debating objective morality. I'm going to be doing a debate this Friday and a debate on the 15th. And I'm going to be debating two different atheists that think that that morality is not real, that morality is not objective. I am one of the atheists that believe morality is objective. And I source morality mostly within game theory, right? So game theory is like a mathematical framework to figure out which decision is good, right? And so once you're in a game theoretic paradigm, the game gives you the goal. Morality is always connected to goals, right? Once you have a goal, there's a good way to get to the goal, and then there's a bad way to get to the goal. And so once you build that paradigm, then you can be able to, there's objectively better and worse ways to get to the goal. Better and worse, that's equivalent to good and bad, right? Good and bad, it's mathematically objective.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean,
yeah. And so some people be like, well, where's the goal? We just arbitrarily choose our goals. And that gets me back to like our evolutionary situations. Okay. We don't choose our goals. We are given our goals by evolution. Right?
So me, on a cognitive level, it's like when I jump into a no limit Texas Hold'em no limit tournament, whatever, and I find myself in that predicament, and I have to control my environment based on my betting and all my decisions and my choices. It's like the same cognitive rigor that I get from teaching. You know what I mean? I think tapping into intuition is something that's hard to talk about in an academic level. You know what I mean? I think it makes me a better teacher, but I guess it's debatable, I think that this technology that we're tapping into is going to deliver moments like these to students in less graphic novel ways. You know what I mean? Like just the elements of being a kid on a farm. It exposes you to mathematics in an organic way on such a huge level. If you could recreate that in VR, I mean, it's just like
there's actually a game you can do that in VR now. It's like like the Sim City games. Well, there's now one on how to be a farmer, how to be a trucker, but there's a big one on how to be a farmer that is pretty, adept of people just managing a farm and getting money and getting a lot of money, playing the stocks buying up, certain things, but there are like actual games where you incrementally put each plant into the now too.
I had students in my classroom using VR, and the first game that they wanted me to get was called Job Simulator. They would like work in a 7-Eleven or work in a cafeteria and work in a fucking auto shop, and that's like what they wanted to play, like freshmen in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
They wouldn't like. I feel like they would want to play PUA Simulator.
I mean, they got around it a bunch of other shit, but the first thing that they like got binged on was Job Simulator. It's weird, dude.
Well, I mean, I guess it's like you could, the aspect of you pretending you could do whatever the hell you want to, like run.
And having like facility at it, I mean, like being capable at it, because it's a video game and like they're doing their multitasking and doing shit, and buzzers are going off and they're getting instant gratification. I don't know, but they fucking loved it. It's crazy.
You sound very pessimistic about this generation sometimes, but you're really happy about VR. And the funny thing is, I think it's the Navy, especially the guys that are doing the subs and the ships, like all the technical stuff. They are more surprised because the newer kids are more adept at these things than any of the other previous generations. They're much more adept. They're smarter. They think much quicker on things. This lever goes forward, all of that. Like, the ability to work on, different computer interfaces and being very, very smart about that. It's increased, fivefold compared to, the generation of the 70s or 80s. Like, none of those guys could even dare sit in a sub or like in a dark room with a computer screen. None of them could do it.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that, a lot of that will be even better because of all these virtual reality training now.
Well, they've had surgical training in VR for like 25 fucking years, man.
And they never really used it that much, too. Like,
I'm sure your top level surgeons, they're not getting like top level surgeons are on call for a long time because they're not getting like there's not a lot of like orders up in the window. You know what I mean? Like you get maybe 5 in a week, maybe you get 2 in a week. But you know what I mean? How do you practice? And I think they've had VR, high level VR for like setting bones and doing shit like that. And I think it's very
well, the thing is also you have to have like 10 doctors design the game to like put like how do you do brain surgery or figure that stuff out? You have to have doctors spend a year help programming that completely.
I wouldn't be surprised if these fucking doctors program the Asgard's Wrath and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like pilots use VR all the time.
Yeah. No,
like
it's a tool. It's like a calculator, man.
Like the idea of you spend 1,000 extra hours just working on landing planes in VR or on just the desktop before you actually get into a plane is huge.
Man, I'm not saying I was a DUI guy, but like I knew that playing Gran Turismo made me a better driver. When maybe I had a little pot in my system, you know what I mean? Hitting those roads, 75 miles per hour, and I was wasted in my living room. And when I was, just a little bit buzzed in my car, going 55 was no problem. You know what I mean? It was training. And
do you have like the whole setup or like the plastic setup?
No, you just have your fucking coffee table and your smokes,
No, I mean when you're playing the game Gran Turismo.
Yeah, you just have your smokes and you're just passing the controller and you're like racing and shit.
Oh, all right. You don't actually use the, you don't have a steering wheel.
I don't have the Rogan simulator. No.
All right. But I'm going to also, because both you guys have never played KSP, you need to play KSP, or at least look at a few of the games on it on YouTube.
Sure, man. KSP.
Because it's a big physics game too, like, because it's like,
Oh, wait. I don't know how this connects to my goals. I have no motivation if I don't understand the purpose of this.
no, like YouTube it. That's just
Well played. Yeah, I'm probably not going to look at this.
yeah. No, I'm just showing the general idea of,
which is totally unfair for me to say that, I guess. But yeah, probably not.
You're the teacher.
Yeah. William was like, kids these days are not motivated. I'm not motivated. No,
I
it's
just
fine.
feel like fucking Dreamcast, and I'm probably wrong. You know what I mean?
Dreamcast.
I tried to play that last Zelda game with the fucking clouds and building your own like tanks and like too much fucking work. You know what I mean?
I want to hear Andreas's take on this whole childhood Zoomer generation. Do you think too much intellectual stimulation, like too much fast food, YouTube shorts, is it bad for them or good for them?
It's really hard to tell. I think a lot of people are really different every generation. It's like earlier when you were talking about how, or Aiden was talking about how he feels with technology because he's got access to lots of information. It's like, I feel like when things were off, and I've been in situations like in the desert or thing, like in my youth, and I've been in and out of circumstances. Like my house didn't have internet or like cable at certain points and stuff. I live in South America, so my mind's always populated with lots of thoughts, and if anything, media maybe distracts me. Like I might put on video, like my algorithm's so screwed up because it'll just be like nothing but Unreal tutorials or nothing but circuit engine like soldering tutorials or nothing but Raspberry Pi cooling fan tutorial. Like once I watch something, it's like, whoa, maybe he's into this, and it just becomes like everything the algorithm's into, and like that's all there is. So I don't know. Yeah, if I didn't have, I think kids these days, like some of them are like that and some of them aren't. Like some kids want to and can come up with millions of ideas all the time, like they're like idea bleeding machines, and other kids aren't, and their access to information is going to imprint, and a lot of people like to imprint. Like they can copy a whole bunch of patterns and learn how to behave from other people's behavior and modeling. The other thing is when you're trying to show someone a movie, if it's 24 frames a second or 18 frames a second, like cartoons are what, like 12 to 18 frames a second a lot of the time? And
now they can be 24 to 60. Because
24 frames a second is still, and this is what I'm going to get to, because like 24 frames a second is still a third of the speed of 60 frames a second, which is 60 hertz, 90 hertz, 120 hertz. People are like 120, 240, 3890 hertz now. These kids are used to seeing things differently. And so if you're not using machine learning to translate a 24p film into a 60p film with more fluidity, then it's weird for them. Like just to stare at like something that's flashing slower than what they're used to. Like they probably notice it and it feels uncomfortable. And I think we need to recognize that.
You know how it used to be commonplace for to know people who could not watch black and white movies?
Yeah, totally.
Like there was a thing like, oh, you don't get that. They don't like black and white movies. Like they can't watch it. Like,
yeah, I feel like kids should have to watch black and white movies when they're little, so that it's like they're able.
So what is the level to which kids will not watch some shit? You know what I mean? Like, oh, they don't. Like they cut the crusts off their shit. They got to pour sugar in their Chick-fil-A sauce. I don't know, like.
But like what's happening is
Andreas. Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, Medusa scene.
The greatest thing ever, right? And I think that's what kids need. Is that like that show kind of is the marriage of like tradition and technology. Yeah, their Eastern friend, and they're clearly in the background studying his Eastern beliefs and his quantum astral projecting religion, and they're making technology which makes it possible for them to astral project, and they're building a metaverse with data servers that they can interact with.
with this
And that was for
crazy guy.
6 to 10-year-olds.
Of
course.
playing video games with this crazy guy, and nothing really bad happens. But they still have to have that, like, the VR setup because they want to
Bad
do
stuff
the
happens.
graphics.
They have bad stuff happens because first off, like Johnny Quest was always weird because even in the '60s it was about like the son of a anthropologist and phenomenologist working with the CIA around the world, you know,
and
so
has
the
a
sequel
bodyguard
series,
that is totally not his dad's.
that's the CIA. No, he's in the CIA. I don't know. Hope not. Is that what's going on? I never read it.
I don't know. That's what
You
I
know
always
what?
joke about. Like race,
could be
like
right.
Race Bannon is dead to me because Mike Pence is a jerk off.
All right, here's a dumb question, Andreas. Dumb question. 007 in the movies. Basically, what he had were like iPhones and a lot of the technologies that we just take for granted today, right?
Yeah.
And all the evil people had all the technology too, right? So
And not
if-
advanced since then. They're
if
same
all the
technology.
007 technology from the 60s and 70s turn out to be true, what is the 007 technology today?
That's what I mean. Like the new movies, they don't really have new technology.
Yeah, they
Like,
can't show us anything.
Right. Yeah. Because there
They
isn't
got
really
nothing.
anything new. Yeah.
Well, I
there isn't
mean,
really
yeah, it's kind of pointless, and like a lot of these spy stuff that we see now, like being revealed, like all the day, most spies are kind of like big fucking losers.
24/7 spies.
They're kind of nerds that hang out at.
Spies on piano.
You get a lot
they
more out
hang
of
out at State
espionage these
Department
days after the movie Enemy of the State, where they put all these little tags on Will Smith, They replaced his watch with a watch that records him. That movie's a bigger metaphor than people realize. In Enemy of the State, like, he gets his watch replaced, he gets his shoes replaced, everything gets bugged. But it's not just him. It's like everyone's having their watch replaced. Everyone's having this is the beginning of when technology starts replacing that stuff. And in general, there's a ubiquity that now your cable box comes with a microphone in it because it's just cheaper to make it that way. And everything is recorded,
Dude, the biofeedback between me and my phone is insane. The algorithm, like, god damn, like, it's beyond parody at this point. It just is fact. You know what I mean? Like the things it dials in for you. God damn, it's nuts. Like you had to search out the publications that you liked to find the articles that you thought you liked. Now, you know what I mean? It's like this shit grows on you. It's very invasive, and we just accept it. Like, I see like 4 hours of Andreas's fucking show a week, like without choice. It pops up on my fucking screen. Sometimes I find I'm on it.
I'm waiting.
I don't ever want to be on this fucking show, and then I find out I'm on it. It's like
You're not allowed to escape.
This thing, it just devours us, and we're so complacent. And like I said, we're a part of it. Okay, so last thing. This is so against. I don't know. I can't even do it. Can't even do it.
Well, you can't say it like that. Come on.
You're such a tease.
Yeah, I can't tease like that. What?
All right, so no, I can't.
You gotta. I'm gonna solo you now.
All right, it's the last thing. It's this. You don't think that there's like a number one podcaster voice right now?
I mean,
No.
Hillary
Like,
Clinton.
I just throw that out there, and you haven't said anyone. No one has. I'm not going to press you on it, but like, I think there is a number one podcaster voice right now. And it's not Joe Rogan, and he's feared, and I feel like he's watching.
What? Well,
I know that's over the top, but I apologize for the drama.
Is it Keffels?
Who?
Is it William Morgan? Like, what is it? I'm so curious. Who's the number one?
William Morgan's really funny. That's a good twist.
Is it Vosh or Destiny?
No.
God.
I'm thinking only lolcows. I'm sorry.
Well, at least I got some names. You know what I mean?
Chapo Trap House.
At least I got some fucking names. I didn't get any names before.
all
Vows,
our friends,
Destiny,
you're right.
Chapo Trap House.
No, those
are those the
Campbot.
Dominator
I like
voices?
Campbot.
Are those the
Don't make fun of people
Dominator
I've met.
voices? Are those the leaders?
No, those are the shitbag left that are constantly on TikTok. a lot of
mean
them are
champagne
like
left.
trans activists that are all like all the trans activists. They will all watch shows together, or they all support the same people, and they're like hardcore advocates.
Zoobies
So
are
they'll
the
watch
Here it is.
everything of that one
Who's
person.
the Dave Letterman of podcasts? Because we know that Rogan isn't Letterman level. We would never give him that distinction.
Letterman's a jackass who insults his guests.
No, but who is
He
that
could never
standard?
exist in podcast world.
Oh, so
I think
he doesn't exist.
Zuby's
Okay.
underrated. Zuby's pretty base. Zuby does some pretty great interviews.
I guess
He's got a lot of
Norm
stuff.
took over that mantle, right? Norm did before he died.
Dude,
Or
Norm
he
was
just
based.
disappeared.
Letterman's still alive, bro. I don't know what you want to say.
Yeah, but he shed the character. You know what
I
I
don't know
mean?
if
He's
anyone's
clearly
gonna
not
be because
that.
it's a whole different world now. You know what I mean? Like this is what this is, and that's what that was, and they're not the same. You know, like they're not. This is the COVID generate. Like it was interesting when they tried it. COVID was them trying it. You could see them all like in little
Yeah, they
boxes
couldn't do
and-
it. They did not know how to run their own. They couldn't get the lightings in their own fucking house to work.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that. They couldn't even create laugh tracks to go along with their jokes when they're alone in their house.
Dude.
I mean, the inability to revive SNL, to put Jon Stewart back in the saddle. I mean, they really just have nothing left, right?
Yeah, Jon Stewart turned out to be kind of. I have this joke. I always want to go up to Jerry Seinfeld. I want to go up to him. It's like, oh, you had a very successful show. And he'd be like, oh, fuck yeah, of course I had a great show. It's like, you're almost as like a popular as Chris Chan.
Like, do we ascribe Shane Gillis any weight?
Shane Gillis, I mean, he was pretty big, but he totally destroyed Vice News. I mean, him and his silly indiscretions with his Indian friend and their thing about hiring high-end escorts really.
There was a hot minute where Gavin McInnes had some weight, but he just faded.
Gavin doesn't play too much stuff.